There are few storylines in Star Wars Legends that can span the entire chronology from the days of the Old Republic to the heroism of Luke Skywalker and his descendants. One such saga is the tale of the Lost Tribe of the Sith, which has origins dating all the way back to the reign of Naga Sadow. This video will cover the 9 short stories by John Jackson Miller and the single comic series that effectively serve as the prequel to the EU series Fate of the Jedi, where the tribe is finally introduced to the greater galaxy. It is a fun dive into a Sith world-building experience capped with several unique technological restraints that cause the tribe to evolve in unexpected ways. Let's dive in. Commander Yaru Corson pilots a heavily damaged starship called the Omen. The ship is crippled and slowly falling out of space towards a large blue planet. The Omen is a Sith transport ship, part of the fleet of the Sith Lord Naga Sadow. Another such ship is the Harbinger, piloted by the fallen Jedi Says. Corson and his crew had departed earlier from Phagon 3, carrying lignin crystals alongside the Harbinger. However, they were attacked by a Jedi starfighter. The Harbinger took damage, veering into the Omen just as it jumped to hyperspace. Now, the damaged Omen seems to be caught in a gravity well, which would spell the doom of everyone on board. Yaru's adopted brother, Devor, blames the navigator Boyle Markham for their predicament. The two brothers have an icy relationship, stemming from Yaru's appointment as captain of the Omen, a position their father had coveted for years. The ship crashes through the planet's atmosphere, which miraculously turns out to have breathable air. Sela, the wife of Devor, shows up to the bridge carrying their son Jeriah. Yaru knows the ship needs to slow down to land safely and opens the torpedo doors. A winged beast of some sort strikes the view window, seen only by him. He guides the ship towards a mountain range, looking to reach land and protect the crystals. The Omen crashes and slides for a long while, barely stopping before the edge of a cliff. It is revealed that Corson's crew were once part of the Tapani Empire, subjects of the Sith. 21 were lost in the crash, and Yaru now knows his failure to deliver the crystals to Naga Sadow will mark him for death. They are also now effectively stranded on the remote world and at the mercy of its environment. Also on the ship were Majestic warriors, under the command of the Sith Ravalon. The Majestic are having an adverse reaction to the planet's atmosphere, and are dying off quickly. A fight breaks out among the crew, and Markham is killed by Devor, who claims the navigator attacked first. Yaru decides to set out on an expedition with 3 of the strongest Majestic warriors, but they all die before returning. His first mate Gloyd then tells him a 6-legged beast had attacked the camp while he was gone, and required 5 soldiers to kill. They tried to cook its meat, but someone had died upon consuming it. It is another troubling development for Yaru, who also has not seen any more of the flying beasts. Yaru decides to salvage what he can from the Omen, hoping he can get the transmitters working again. He finds Devor already in the commander chair, with an empty tube of spice lying nearby. Devor is distraught, for the ship is totaled, but Yaru hopes that blame can be placed on the Harbinger. He then deduces that Devor had tried to make an unsuccessful power play for the Omen, appealing to Naga Sadow himself. Driven on by the spice, Devor draws his lightsaber and sends a whirlwind of debris at Yaru through the Force. He spots another winged creature in that moment, and is then slammed into the side of the ship. Devor's attacks rain down on him, but Yaru is able to blast open a door that strikes him in the shoulder. Devor slides to the edge of the cliff. Yaru helps him to his feet, but knowing what he must do to protect his crew in the mission, lets Devor fall off the edge. Yaru returns to his crew, where all of the Majestic have died, and Sela soon realizes that he killed Devor. Yaru by now has come to terms with their situation, and tells the remaining Sith they must settle on the planet and make it their own. He takes comfort in remembering that he had also seen a rider on the winged beast, and believes the Force is with them. And elsewhere, Sela begins to plot her revenge against Yaru. It turns out the Omen has crashed on the world of Kesh, populated by the native Kashiri. Adari Val is a social exile of these people, and works as a geologist. She is accused of being a heretic by her people, and is a widow of a Neshtovari. The Neshtovari are a social class of winged beast riders, and her husband, who she loved little, was abandoned by his over the sea. She attends the third day of her hearing, appearing before Izzy Das, the chief of the Neshtovari. Adari knows the continent they all live on was created by volcanic eruptions, but this view is seen as heresy by the other Kashiri. Nonetheless, she passionately defends her views and research. The Kashiri believed the land was created by the Skyborn, their deities, when drops of their blood fell into the sea as they battled the other side. Just then, a boom shakes the village, and flames begin to billow from a nearby mountain range. The villagers panic, believing the Skyborn have come to punish them. Adari decides to investigate the fires and takes her Uvak out for a 2-day expedition. They fly to the Satajan Range, and there she finds a strange, shining shell that is actually the ship the Omen. Adari then sees a man emerge from it with a strange crimson blade by a cliff. He seems to throw something down to the depths below, and Adari flees. Later that night, as she camps out, she hears a voice seeming to call out to her in the wind, uttering deliverance, and we are yours, and you are ours. She feels compelled to explore further, and then comes across a cluster of campfires. There, Adari is captured by the Sith survivors of the Omen, and a man introduces himself as Yaru Corson before she falls unconscious. Over the course of several days, Adari learns of the nature of the Sith and how they came to Kesh. Yaru treats her kindly, and confides they wish to find a way to reach the mainland. Sela Corson, however, does not trust Adari, even though the Kashiri says she will return after speaking with her village. Thus, the Neshtovar are brought to the Sith, and are astounded at the foreign people and their strange glowing weapons. They grow to believe the Sith are the Skyborn, come as deliverance for the Kashiri. Yaru Corson is hailed as Grand Lord of the Skyborn, and he accepts his role as their deity. He proclaims the Sith will build a great temple in Tav, their goal to one day take to the stars again. The Sith immediately gain great prestige in Tav, and are treated like royalty. Adari recognizes Corson now as the man she saw first emerge from the Omen, and asks him what he had thrown over the cliff. She knows it was another person, and is stunned when she learns it was his brother. Yaru asserts that he had been a danger to the Sith, and uses the Force to calm Adari. In exchange for her keeping the killing a secret, he offers to teach her in the ways of the Force. "15 years have passed since the Sith arrived in Tav. They have effectively taken over the Kashiri, who now serve them as attendants and worship their powers. Sela has married Yaru, and now has a daughter as well as a son. They have made little progress in leaving Kesh, as it turns out the planet is void of any metals. Consequently, any technology they have must come from the ruins of the Omen. But whatever the Sith try to build promptly fizzles out. Ravalon, a native red-skinned Sith rather than a pure-blooded human, has become a leader of sorts for the remaining native Sith people on Kesh. The original religion of the Kashiri has changed, for now the Sith are seen as protectors, guardians against a mysterious race called the Destructors. The Destructors supposedly visit Kesh periodically and inflict great pain on the planet, and only the Protectors will be able to stop them. Sela, in the meantime, exercising her power as the wife of Grand Lord Corson, has begun to investigate the bloodlines of the original crew. She claims that she seeks to understand why the native Sith seem to be biologically rejected by Kesh. However, Sela has darker motives. For long ago, she and her family had been slaves for Ludo Kresh, a major political rival of Nagasadao. Thus, she despises the native Sith, and now looks to purge them entirely from Kesh. Additionally, Sela still harbors a deep resentment for Yaru, who killed her first husband, as well as the Uvak rider Adari. Yaru and Sela had married for political advantage, to heal the rift between the Omen's crew and the miners on board. Presently, Ravalon is sent to the faraway land of Tetsubal to research a type of luminescent algae. After some time, they receive news that the entire population of Tetsubal has died, and Ravalon is supposedly the only survivor. Yaru, Sela, and a contingent of Sith travel to him, and Ravalon urges Yaru to cut the Sith off from the Kashiri, a decision Sela vehemently disagrees with. the Sith begin to withdraw back to Tab, careful to keep the deaths a secret to avoid panic spreading among the Kashiri. More news arrives of similar incidents, all where Ravalon has traveled to recently. Sela then discovers that the bodies of water near all the affected were laced with cyanogen silicate, seemingly done by Ravalon in a futile attempt to convince Yaru to focus all his efforts into leaving Kesh. A furious Yaru executes the remaining 57 red-skinned Sith, leaving Ravalon for last. Sela approaches the Sith, revealing that though she knew he had poisoned Tetsubal, it was she who had struck at the other cities in an act of mass genocide. Additionally, Sela is responsible for a recent slew in newborn deaths among the red-skinned Sith. Ravalon is outraged, and Sela then summons her son Jariad, who cuts him down. It is then revealed that Tilden Ka, an attendant for Sela, is part of a secret Kashiri resistance movement against the Sith, and among its leaders is Adari Val, who has vowed to eliminate the plague she has brought upon her people. At this point in time, Grand Lord Yaru Corson has accepted the fact that the Sith will never be able to leave Kesh. He begins to consolidate their power and build a new empire, with the capital being Tav. With the purge of the 57 native Sith far in the past, the lost tribe of the Sith had become a homogeneous group of humans. The power of Yaru Corson is unquestionable, and Adari Val continues to visit his court. She poses as a friend of the Sith, while living in secret as the leader of a resistance movement against the tribe. Her son Finn had died some time ago in a construction accident, and she now looks to lift the illusion that the Sith are gods to the Kashiri. A contingent of Uvak riders then arrives at the Eternal Circle of Tav, led by Nita Corson, daughter of Sela and Yaru. She leads a division called the Skyborn Rangers, and is despised by Sela. As for her son Jariad, who she looks on more favorably, he has become a High Lord and leader of the Sith Sabers. Jariad, who hates Yaru as much as Sela, is the perfect tool for her scheme of vengeance to bear fruit. Yaru is then asked by Jiraiya for permission to take the Sith Sabers to the northern reaches for a training mission. Adari, with her surviving son Tona, meets with other resistance leaders back in the city. They include the Neshtovar, who seek to reclaim the prestige they lost in the Sith takeover. There are resistance agents embedded deep in the Sith, including Tona. He is the stable master for Nita Corson's Skyborn Rangers, and will play a key role in their upcoming strike. This plan is happening at the same time, coincidentally, as Sela's planned attack. For Jariad with his sabers ambushes Grand Lord Yaru Corson in a plaza, surrounding him and his right-hand man Gloyd. Sela reveals her true intentions, at last looking to avenge Devor. Then, resistance members steal Uvaks from the stables and take to the skies. They are led by Adari, who looks to deprive the Sith of their riders, but it seems a large part of their forces from Tav are late to the meetup. Yaru and his bodyguards flee, but Jariad has the advantage in numbers and corners him. The battle rages on, and Yaru is wounded several times by his nephew. He is driven back to the edge of a cliff, just as Nita Corson and her Skyborn Rangers arrive to the fray. It is revealed Nita has been secretly training in the ways of the dark side since she was a child. Yaru had overseen her education and kept it a secret from Sela, who he knew hated their daughter. He wishes for Nita to become his heir, and over the years she has cultivated a vast network of informants and allies. Elsewhere, 1,000 Kashiri and nearly 5,000 Uvak have been gathered under Adari. It is revealed Tona had betrayed her plans to Nita, and his fate is now unimportant to Adari. She leads the Kashiri and Uvak away from the Sith to a distant remote island. It is a treacherous journey, and only 300 survive the trek. The arrival of Nita to the battle effectively extinguishes the rebellion. Gloyd unleashes a proton detonator in Sela's chambers, crippling her. Grand Lord Yaru Corson died from his wounds to Jariad, but Nita then throws her brother over a cliff. To Nita's knowledge, the Uvak rebels are gone. She now imprisons Sela in the Sith Temple, and seals it off from the rest of society forever. Ori Katai watches from a distance as Jelf of Marasota tends his fields. They are far from any major cities on Kesh, a remote life closer to the ghost towns of the Ragnos Lakes. Ori is a Sith saber and is interested in Jelf, a gardener who seems to harbor no ambitions of social prestige at all. For all intents and purposes, he appears to be content with a simple life as a subject of Sith like Ori. It just so happens that the next day is Donellan's Day, or the Day of the Dispossessed, which marks 1,000 years since the birth of Nita Corson's child. Donellan, her son, stood to inherit power upon Nita's death. However, he had ended up dying before her, never making a decisive play for the throne. Consequently, Nita then instituted a succession system based on merit, not heritage. Ori wants to know more about Jelf's past, but he insists he is, and always has been, a slave. She is given several flowers and departs on her Uvak. The planet of Kesh is still absent of advanced technology, and the only ship on the planet is in the mountains near the ancient Sith temple, now closed off from society by the order of the first Grand Lord Corson. There has been no news of the outside world, but the Sith are now focused on the upcoming celebrations and games, during which there will be much political jousting among the 7 High Lords. The present Grand Lord, Leviathans, is seen as weak by Ori. Her nomination was a compromise between the other 6 High Lords 20 years ago, and Ori believes it is only a matter of time before the throne changes hands. Her own mother, Kandra, was appointed as the newest High Lord upon Lilia's ascension. Ori meets up with Kandra in their section of the stands to watch the first game of rake riding, a brutal gladiatorial blood sport with wingless Uvaks. Her family has a sponsored rider in the contest, Campion Day. As the game commences, however, Day's Uvak somehow flies into the air and makes a beeline straight for Grand Lord Ben's booth. Day tries to assassinate Ben, but is blasted with force lightning and killed. Kandra and Ori, who had no idea of Day's intentions, are now in a dangerous position. Ori is sent back to their estate, but the blame has fallen on her family for the assassination attempt. She discovers their home to be burned down by the order of Ben, and that her family has been disenfranchised and converted to slaves. Lost and confused, Ori leaves her home to seek out Jelf. Over several days, Ori comes to terms with her new social status and learns that Kandra is still alive. She and Jelf theorize the assassination was staged by Ben herself, as a way to remove the Katais from political power. For as the newest High Lord, Kandra had held the power to cast a tie-breaking vote in selecting Ben's replacement. Jelf leaves the farm for an expedition into the forest, and while he is gone, Ori discovers her Uvak has been killed. The Luzo brothers, both Sith sabers, then appear. They are former political rivals of the Katais and gloat at their downfall. They show Ori 2 false confessions supposedly signed by Kandra, admitting to conspiring to kill Ven. Kandra has surrendered to the will of Ven, and is now her personal slave. Ori is forced to hand over her lightsaber in exchange for a metal spade, a stark reminder of her dispossession. The brothers leave, and Ori in a fit of rage rampages across Jelf's home. In her tantrum, however, she strikes a pile of manure and hears the clang of metal. She digs into it and discovers a Republic starfighter. Her eyes light up, for it presents the opportunity for the Katais to regain prestige by presenting the technology to the Sith. It is then revealed that Jelf is a Jedi, and a former member of the Jedi Covenant dedicated to preventing the return of the Sith to the galaxy. However, upon learning of the Covenant's collapse 3 years ago, he had ventured to the unknown regions and discovered Kesh. Presently, Jelf returns to his home to find Ori gone and his ship uncovered. Knowing a day of reckoning has come, Jelf draws his lightsaber and follows Ori's tracks. Jelf races towards Tav, stopping at a bar for a brief respite. He reflects on his past in the Jedi Covenant, and how he had survived the Battle of Toprawa. It was there that Barriss Dre had also died, and Crinda Dre had established the Jedi Covenant on Terrace. Jelf was recruited into their ranks, and operated as a Jedi Shadow. He had been on a mission when the Covenant was toppled during the Mandalorian Wars, and had come across Kesh by sheer chance. Jelf became a simple farmer, and during evenings worked to repair his damaged starfighter. Now, however, he must figure out where Ori Katai has fled, for she knows his secret. It turns out she has set out to find her mother at Tav's zoo, where she has been relegated to shoveling manure. Ori asks her if she can get an audience with the High Lords to tell them of Jelf's ship. After some thought, Kendra tells her to find the 4 High Lords not blindly loyal to Grand Lord Ven, 2 in the red political faction and 2 in the gold. Ori races away, stealing a lightsaber from a nearby guard. Jelf reaches Tav, a nexus of dark side power in the Force. He decides to try and find Ori in the aqueducts under the city, knowing she explored them frequently during her time as a Sith Saber. As thoughts of the Sith race through his head, he encounters Ori, who attacks him for lying about his past. He admits that he is a Jedi, but then also tells Ori the Sith were decisively defeated long ago. Ori becomes downcast, and Jelf then admits his feelings for her. She reveals that she has already spoken with the High Lords, and that a meeting is planned to take place back at the farm. They fly back to Jelf's farm, and he vanishes into hiding as Ori walks out to meet the arriving Sith. To her surprise, the red and gold High Lords are not coming, but instead Grand Lord Lilia Ven and her guards. Kendra had gone behind Ori's back and informed Ven of the ship in exchange for improved working conditions, throwing a wrench into Ori's plans. They approach the ship, and Jelf then springs his trap. He levitates several blasters into the air and opens fire on the Sith. Unfamiliar with this technology, Ven's guards fall back, and Ven climbs into the starfighter. Jelf's face goes pale, and he takes Ori and flees with her into the forest. It is revealed that Jelf has wired a security device to his ship, rigging it with explosives. Lilia Ven attempts to take off, triggering the bombs. A massive explosion goes off, destroying the farm and engulfing the ship and Ven in a fireball. The Grand Lord and her sabers, including the Luzo brothers, are all killed, and a blast of fire can be seen from miles away. Several weeks pass, and Ori and Jelf have vanished into hiding, away from the Sith and their politics. They build a small home deep in the forest, and Jelf also destroys his transmitter, the last piece of advanced technology he had brought to Kesh. Just before he cast it away, however, Jelf had caught the garbled transmission of one final message. He learns of the fall of Revan to the dark side, and that the Republic and Jedi have broken apart in the calamitous Jedi Civil War. Jelf despairs of the division of the Jedi, which he believes was catalyzed by the formation of the Covenant. However, Ori persuades him to turn his back on the wars of the greater galaxy, for there is nothing else they can do. Jelf comes to agree, and they settle into life in the forest. The Sith on Kesh have fallen into turmoil. After Grand Lord Ven's disappearance in the night of the Upside-Down Meteor, the various political factions of the Sith broke out into civil war. Many Kashiri were forced to join the Sith forces, and the planet has known nothing but conflict for nearly a millennium. The elderly Varner Hiltz reflects on his role in Sith society, for due to his age he will soon become obsolete and of little use. He is the caretaker of the Sith, charged with timekeeping and maintaining historical archives with his Kashiri assistant Jay Vold. Testament Day is approaching, a holiday every 25 years in which citizens listen to Yaru Coruscant's final testament. Hiltz is then visited by Ileana Mirko, a leader of a faction called the Sisters of Sela. She has come to ask Hiltz to change what is read in the testament to favor the Sisters, as many rivaling factions will be present at the ceremony. Hiltz is under enormous political pressure, but stalls Ileana by showing her a small pyramid, supposedly the holocron of Yaru Coruscant. It is only a recording device in actuality, but manages to get Ileana off his back. As Testament Day approaches, the tension in the air is palpable. Many will flock to hear the words of Coruscant and gain some guidance from his testament. Hiltz is aware that Sith society is dangerously close to collapse, and Ileana soon demands that he take the pyramid apart so she can tap into its secrets. Several rival political factions then arrive, and a fight nearly breaks out. Among them are the Corsonite League, led by Corson Bentado and Force 57. To quell the unrest, Hiltz declares the Pantheon's peace, citing that over time the Kashiri and standard clocks have drifted apart by 8 days. Consequently, the recording of Corson will be presented that very day. The recording of Corson's testament, during which he ceded power to his daughter Nida, is played to the Sith. They immediately begin bickering over their respective interpretations of his words, but Hiltz then discovers a second message inadvertently, one none of them have heard before. The face of Naga Sadow then appears, addressing Yaru Corson as his subject and ordering for the delivery of lignin crystals to the planet of Kurik. The Sith thus learn that Corson and all of their ancient descendants were not in fact conquerors, but the mining subjects of Naga Sadow. They are, for all intents and purposes, a lost tribe of the Sith born from runaway slaves. The revelation shakes the gathered Sith greatly, for it threatens to undermine their authority over Kesh. Ileana destroys the recording device, but the shocking news is somehow leaked to the thousands of Kashiri and humans outside. Massive riots break out across the planet, and as Hiltz watches his city burn, he remembers the words of Yaru stating the true power is behind the throne. He suddenly realizes Yaru was talking about the ship Omen, and takes Jay with him to the sealed temple and the ship within. As Tab burns behind them, Hiltz and Jay make their way to the sealed temple, where no one has been inside since Nida Corson centuries ago. They find the temple, and Hiltz ventures in alone. There, to his surprise, he finds Ileana cradling the bones of Sela Corson. Jay shows up, and they both learn that the other Sith factions are hunting Ileana and are likely on their way already. The three move on to the Omen itself, but cannot find the captain's seat. They then hide as the opposing Sith arrive, determined to destroy the Omen to purge their embarrassing history. The factions have united in this common cause, and begin constructing a massive tower designed to fall on the ship and destroy it. Hiltz, Ileana, and Jay hide inside the Omen, and soon discover the command chair and throne of Corson behind a hatch. The walls of the room are dark, and the ceiling is a planetarium. Hiltz cuts open the back of the chair and finds a flimsy, written by Corson's mother. In it, she claims to have had a vision of their descendants ruling over a great people, free from the native Sith. Hiltz believes, however, that this message cannot be Corson's secret, for he knows from studying the histories that Corson had given up on finding a way back to space. Jay then mentions he had seen a small chamber near the base of the Omen support structure, where he believes that Corson had recorded his final testament. It is a small octagonal room, with one wall having a large stone map of Keshta, their continent, one with a door leading in and the other 6 blank. Then, Jay is suddenly cut down and killed, for the Sith faction leaders have broken into the ship and the chamber. They charge at Ileana, and Hiltz calls upon the Force, but he does not strike at the attackers, and instead pulls the blank slabs away from the walls. They crash to the ground, revealing a massive map extending from the original one of Keshta. It shows the rest of the world, and most importantly, the existence of another large continent on Kesh. The continent the Lost Tribe settled on is called Keshta Minor, and Keshta Major, according to Yaru Corson, is home to another civilization. It is a stunning discovery, and more writings of Corson are discovered, written in his native language of Tapani. However, because Hilt's archives were burned in the riots, he is now the only person on the planet able to read them. Then, the Sith kneel before Varner Hiltz, and proclaim him the new Grand Lord of the tribe. The Lost Tribe becomes united once more, after nearly a millennium of infighting. The Sith are galvanized into exploring Kesh and finding Keshta Major, an effort projected to take years. The political rifts are healed, and Ileana becomes the consort of Grand Lord Hiltz. He also decides to begin the process of fully integrating the Kashiri into society at the same level of humans, knowing a great change is coming to the Sith of Kesh. The Kashiri Quara Thane oversees the testing of ballistae at the fort of Garrow's Neck. It is situated on the northwest coast of Alansar, the continent known to Grand Lord Hilt and the lost tribe of the Sith as Kesh Major. Quara serves as the wardmaster in the military, and makes her way for Point Defiance, one of the westernmost points on Alansar. She is a mother of 3, and is unique among the Kashiri in that she is force sensitive. Alansar as a whole is wary of the darkness that lies to its west, and has heavily fortified its 6 peninsulas facing in that direction. At Port Defiance, Quara meets with Jogan Halder for the first time, a close companion of hers she had only known before by written letter. They begin an affair, but as they kiss, Quara suddenly sees something emerge from the fog in the distance. It is 3 massive foreign airships, and Quara senses a dark presence in the Force. She sends a message everywhere across Alansar, warning the Sith have finally returned. On one of the airships is High Lord Adel Vry, chief engineer of the Sith and leader of this particular expedition. The day marks a momentous occasion, for it is the first contact between the Sith and the Kashiri of Alansar. Vry was able to construct the airships using large gas balloons, which could be guided by the winged Uvaks. He named them the Kandra, Lilia, and Don Ira. It is a reflection of Grand Lord Hilt's efforts to get the tribe to re-embrace their historical figures. The airship slow as they approach the land of Alansar, and though in the gloom Vry can spot structures, he sees no signs of the large cities Yaru Corson spoke of in his recordings. Then the Lilia explodes and bursts into flames, and the Don Itra is struck moments later. The Alansarian Kashiri have struck against the Sith, who are shocked to discover they are stronger adversaries than expected, and are also force sensitive. Quara and Jogan celebrate as the airships are sent crashing down, with Adel Vry looking on in shock as Alansarian Uvak riders wreak havoc on the remaining airship. Meanwhile, Quara suddenly begins to worry her affair will be discovered, as she had told her husband she would be in the north, not at Point Defiance. However, her Moontalk fled in the chaos of the battle, stranding her. Adel and the Kandra are forced to crash land inland on Alansar, and one of their Uvaks is struck out of the sky. It spirals downwards, and lands on top of none other than Jogan, who is wounded. Adel is now stranded with only 4 of his original crew. They wake up to find themselves near Quara and an incapacitated Jogan. Quara fires several glass bolts at the Sith to defend her lover, but she is subdued and taken prisoner by Adel along with Jogan. Adel kills one of his crew who cannot walk and keep up with the party, his cruelty and use of a lightsaber stunning Quara. He then plans to steal a nearby fishing vessel to continue on with his mission for the Sith. Back on Tab, Grand Lord Varner Hilt and his consort Ileana await news of Adel's expedition. It is also Testament Day again, but this time Hilt has prepared a new speech. It looks to reinforce what it means to be a Sith, outlines the new and political social structure of the tribe, and finally recounts the history of the humans of the Omen. Presently, Hiltz and Ileana meet with High Lord Corson Bentado, commander of the Sith military. They learn from Bentado that Adel Vry made contact with Kesh Major. The military commander is eager to strike with the Sith's large fleet of airships, but Ileana urges caution, saying her listeners in the Force sense shock and surprise. But Hiltz allows Bentado to carry on, for they now realize the attack poses an opportunity to rid them of a political enemy. Adel Vry leads his crew in a vicious battle to capture a ship called Mischance. He is guided by Quara, using Jogan's life as leverage. After claiming the ship, Adel debates his next course of action. He knows that Corson Bentado will likely be on the way soon with a large fleet of 60 airships, and decides to remain on Alansar. Adel commands Quara to take him to the capital city, threatening to kill Jogan if they do not return in 2 weeks. Quara grudgingly agrees, confiding to a feverish Jogan the Sith are not prepared for what's in store for them. So they begin their journey, and as he journeys through the countryside of Alansar, Adel becomes aware of how powerful this foreign Kashiri civilization really is. As he and Quara converse and pass through security checkpoints, he comes to deduce the existence of the relationship between her and Jogan. It becomes evident that Alansar is more advanced than Keshta Minor, and Adel and Quara soon reach the town of Kareba. Quara reveals it is Observance Day, during which there are celebrations and plays to remember the threat of the Sith to Alansar. As Adele's cover while they make their way to the capital, he is to pose as one of the performers. It is clear the Alansar and Kashiri were well prepared for the inevitable arrival of the Sith, and Adele begins to worry they may be too strong for the Sith to defeat. Later, Quara has a Force vision in which Ori Katai and the former Jedi Jelf appear. Ori has a family with 3 children, and they live a peaceful life apart from the obligations of the Sith or Jedi. As they continue on, more alarms begin to ring out across the land. Bentado's fleet has arrived in full might. Adele knows they have come too early, without fully scoping the extent of Alansar's strength. Sure enough, the ballistae and javelins hurled from the ground by the Kashiri catch the fleet by surprise, and the airships are decimated. Bentado's flagship crash lands, and Quara kills the Sith warrior in battle. Adele is spared purely because of their agreement, but Quara now insists on deviating from their course to check on her family's safety. The Sith attack over the western shield of Alansar is mostly unsuccessful, with many of their ships shot down or grounded. Quara returns to her district of Urar to find her children safe, and she and Adele continue on to Susmintri. Adele has become impressed with her capabilities, and extends an offer for Quara to join the Sith under his service. In secret, Quara then receives a message from the Alansarian War Cabinet, which has learned that she has come into contact with the Sith Lord. It orders her to bring him to the capital. They thus arrive at Susmintri and make their way to Val Hall. However, the doors are wide open, and the floors are littered with dead Kashiri. It turns out that Corson Bentado has stormed the hub of the Alansarian signaling network and killed the entire war cabinet and all major politicians. In a masterful move, he has taken control of the war cabinet messaging system and gotten the Kashiri to bring their captured Sith to him, effectively moving his troops into the heart of Alansar. Bentado then orders for a stop to all the alarms, as another wave of Sith airships is on its way. His orders are carried out by the Kashiri, who are unaware the war cabinet has been overthrown. Bentado reveals his vision to establish a second tribe of Sith on Alansar. He has been intrigued by the Alansarian Kashiri, who are more militaristic and capable builders than those on Kesh Minor. It is a daring plan, one that relies on the continuous loyalty of his troops as they remain secluded in Val Hall. Adele tries to argue for the cause of remaining as one united tribe, but his pleas fall on deaf ears. Bentado orders for Adele and Quara to be arrested, and they fight their way out to escape. Quara needs to warn Alansar their government has been compromised, and must also make it back to the missed chance to save Jogan. Adele is wounded by a blast of Force lightning, and reveals that the threat to Jogan was a ploy, and that the missed chance was actually sent back to Kesh Minor on his orders. Guards begin to close in on them, and Quara then stops by a tapestry of a Dari vault. She calls out a secret phrase, and a hidden doorway swings open. Quara and Adele hide in the hidden library of a Dari vault while the Sith of Bentado search for them. There she finds a book, which turns out to be the personal memoirs of Adari herself. There, Adari confesses she had grown to feel weakness around Yaru. Quara discovers Adari's lightsaber and resolves to take down Bentado to help her people. Elsewhere, the Kashiri servant of Bentado named Squab reports another airship has been sighted. Bentado predicts it is the attack of Grand Lord Hiltz as Quara and Adele listen in from the shafts above the command room. They burst through the ceiling and attack Bentado. Squab manages to flee to relay the orders to destroy all the airships as Adele takes on the other Sith High Lord. Quara holds off the guards, but is caught by Bentado, who forces Adele to stand down. Then, Squab returns, revealing the airship of Hiltz has landed, but was not destroyed. Bentado's orders were disobeyed, and it turns out that Squab has been an agent for Grand Lord Hiltz the entire time. Squab then takes Adari's lightsaber and stabs Bentado in the heart, killing him. He greets Adele and offers to take him to Hiltz. Before they depart, Adele reasserts control over Bentado's troops with the Force and seizes control over the signal network. The flagship Good Omen arrives at Susmintri, and Jogan Halder appears on its decks. He then tells a tale of peace, claiming Kesh Minor is a prosperous land where Kashiri are free of tyranny. This, according to Jogan, was a great lie that the civilization of Alansar was built on. The first ships by Adel, according to him, were allegedly sent to hunt down the criminals of Bentada. Jogan apparently defended the Alansarian Kashiri, claiming they would also resist the black evils that came to their lands. As his speech goes on, Jogan gains more support from the masses and even becomes the new herald, replacing the legend of Adari Val. He then makes way for Grand Lord Hiltz, who is wearing a bird-like costume. Hiltz plays an act of a herald from Kashiri mythology, claiming to be more than 2,000 years old and a minion of the mythological Bright Tuash. He claims the servants of the feared destructors have been destroyed, and that the people of Keshta Minor will soon journey over to bridge the gap between their lands. Quora, in the crowd, can see the great deception for what it really is as the crowd cheers. Adele later meets with Hiltz, who reveals they learned much of Alansar from a book from Jogan's collection. The Grand Lord's great manipulation has played out flawlessly, and he now looks to bring the Kashiri of Alansar willingly into the service of the Sith instead of as slaves. Adel is appointed as governor of Alansar, and begins the process of mapping out the rest of the planet and consolidating the technological innovations of Alansar. The Ballistae, as a security contingent for the Sith, are destroyed, but research into shipbuilding begins anew. The unification of Kesh begins in earnest, and Quora realizes the movement built on a great lie cannot be fought, for it was too well orchestrated. She returns to her family home, and decides to simply guide her people through the new times as best she can. It is a monumental day on Kesh, the anniversary of the founding, the arrival of the Skyborn and Protectors who return to live amongst their people. As festivities roar in the streets, a young group of misfits looks on. One of them, named Parlin Spinner, detests the lost tribe of the Sith and how his people have languished on Kesh for 3,000 years without even the dimmest prospect of ever leaving. He attacks the carriage of Grand Lord Hiltz, but is stopped by Hiltz's daughter Takara. He is badly beaten and visited hours later by the Grand Lord himself. To the disappointment of his wife Ileana and Takara, Parlin is allowed to live. Instead of receiving the death penalty, he is sent to serve as part of a ship's crew under Captain Chegg. Takara also sneaks on board, where the ship is heading to Alansar and she looks to gain power there rather than languish in security patrols. However, it turns out their ship is an expeditionary vessel headed not for Alansar, but the south pole of the planet. Parlin and Takara are immediately put to work, with Takara keeping her identity a secret. They land on an icy continent and set up camp. Takara and Parlin attempt to escape and take the ship for themselves to Alansar, but are immediately caught by Chegg and his crew. They flee into the icy wastelands, coming across several massive skeletons. Chegg and his men then appear behind them, but are shot to death with arrows. Several shadowy figures emerge from the snow, with one of them seeming to recognize Takara. They are revealed to be the Doomed, and are all aliens to Kesh, neither human nor the native Kashiri. Parlin and Takara are taken to a massive city, filled with more alien species that astound them. Takara senses the dark side around them, but not from them, as if they are a null in the Force. She attempts to escape to inform the Kesh societies of this civilization, but is abruptly captured by a winged figure named Kaliska. She seems to be Force sensitive, and informs them they are on the continent of Eshkreen. Kaliska teaches Parlin and Takara of the history of the strange society. For 4,000 years ago, the Jedi were beset by a great conflict. Exiles of their order, fallen Dark Jedi including Karnas Mur, Remulus Strapa, and Zozan, waged a bloody battle at Korbos. The Dark Jedi were defeated and fled to Korriban, there forming the Sith Order. Several Jedi veterans from Korbos, however, were set on searching for their remaining foes. They came across a Dark Jedi ship and pursued it all the way to Kesh. Both sides crashed on the planet, thus doomed to be stranded there forever. And on Kesh another great battle was fought, the Kashiri natives awed by the power they witnessed. This is the source of the legend of the Protectors and Destructors, which in turn was manipulated by the lost tribe of the Sith when they landed on Kesh 2,000 years ago. The battle devastated Kesh, to the point where all life on the planet became threatened. In a stunning turn of events, the Jedi and Dark Jedi put aside their differences and came to a truce. A great weapon of the Dark Jedi was sealed away, and all the Force users withdrew to Ashkreen, where they have meditated together in neutrality for 4,000 years to atone for what they did to Kesh. They are the doomed, and view the Force as a curse. It is only when no beings in Ashkreen wield the Force that anyone will be allowed to leave. The doomed briefly considered helping the Kashiri during the Great Civil War long ago, but the ascendants of Grand Lord Hiltz quelled their concerns. Parlin is imprisoned, and Takara is permitted by Kaliska to begin learning the ways of the doomed. However, Parlin later kills his guards and escapes, seeking to find the hidden weapon of the Dark Jedi. A horn then goes off, signaling someone has stolen the great weapon. Kaliska flies Takara to the sea in pursuit of Parlin, who with the rest of the Kashiri crew has stolen back their ship. They land on board, but are too late to stop Parlin from opening the strange metal container holding the weapon. There is an explosion of energy, and then Baron Remulus Drapa emerges, the former Lord of the Sith. It is then revealed that Parlin is a descendant of the Spinner family. Long ago, one of his ancestors had tried to steal the ship Omen and take it to space. They were defeated, and they and their allies became the first human slaves on Kashiri. As penance, they were ordered to spin a long cord that could one day reach space. So for generations, the family labored, and became known as the Spinners. Now, Parlin has broken that tradition, looking to take to space himself. He sees an opportunity in Baron Drapa now to accomplish just that and seize his own destiny. Parlin catches Drapa up to date on the events of the last few millennia and the history of the lost tribe of the Sith. Their ship, containing Takara and Kaliska as prisoners, docks at the town of Aorn. They find the settlement in flames, suffering under the cruel rule of the Sith Lord Galathos. Drapa arrives and confronts him, his far superior knowledge of the Force decisively overpowering Galathos. He summons a storm of energy, killing the Sith and his men. The display of strength awes the people of Aorn, who now look to follow Drapa. However, the Dark Jedi is reluctant to fight for them, stating only he knows the true ways of the Sith are not present on Kesh. Nonetheless, Drapa takes control over the people and vows to return to the stars. Drapa's memories are slowly coming back to him after his long imprisonment, and he comes to believe he had traveled to Kesh in search of something long ago. He plans to attack the Lost Tribe soon, and is aided by Parlin. Takara and Kaliska manage to kill their guards and escape to an Uvak stable. Knowing they will not make it back to Tav in time to warn Grand Lord Hiltz, they decide to return to Ashkreen to rally the doomed. War falls upon the lush plains outside Tav, and initially Ileana believes it to be a mere slave revolt. But then she sees a bloodthirsty Drapa massacring her soldiers, and sends in the Skyborn Rangers. A furious Drapa is forced to withdraw, but remembers something critical from his past. He orders his troops to withdraw towards Cecil Spire in the mountains, seemingly a dead end. With the Uvaks, the doomed fly over the southern ocean and converge on Keshta Minor. Meanwhile, Ileana confronts Parlin, who has begun to have second thoughts on serving Drapa. He leads them to the Dark Jedi, who uses an amulet to unleash several ancient Sith spawns stolen from the labs of Sorza Sin long ago. Monstrous Leviathans burst out of the volcano, and Ileana's forces fall back in terror. Countless are killed, but then the doomed arrive on the Uvaks. Takara attacks Parlin and drives him down, but is forced to leave him to save Ileana from a Leviathan. She kills the beast with Parlin, but it is revealed the Leviathans have the power to consume life essences. Ileana appears to have aged decades, and Drapa begins to summon more monsters. Parlin then suddenly deduces that the doomed and Kaliska are hiding something else, and comes to believe it may be a starship. It is imperative they stop Drapa from discovering it and bringing his war to the rest of the galaxy. Kaliska reveals the ship is hidden under the Circle Eternal in Tav. Takara decides to send Parlin on her Uvak to bring back Ileana and destroy the ship, while she remains behind to defeat Drapa. Then, a Leviathan attacks them and kills Kaliska. Drapa, who now remembers the location of the ship as well, resolves to fly to Tav and claim it. But Takara rises and stands in his way, declaring she will destroy him. Tav and Grand Lord Hiltz prepare for war against Drapa as a weakened Ileana returns with Parlin. Parlin manages to find the starship in a courtyard, but instead of destroying it, he takes to the skies, breaking his agreement with Takara. It is another monumental moment in Kashiri history, a site reminiscent of the upside-down comet nearly 1,000 years ago. Parlin barely manages to control the ship, but eventually takes it into orbit above Kesh. The planet is much larger than previously believed, but Parlin wants to explore the greater galaxy. However, he is then contacted by Drapa. He demands the ship be handed over, and reveals that Takara has become his prisoner. If Parlin does not return, she will be killed and Tav destroyed. Back at the capital, the lost tribe of the Sith puts up a valiant defense against Drapa's Leviathans. Grand Lord Hiltz frantically tries to save the scrolls in his library, and is rescued from a monster at the last moment by Parlin, who has decided to return to the fight. The starship's cannons destroy many Leviathans, and Drapa then scales a building to attack Parlin while mounted on one of the creatures. But Takara, held in one of its tentacles, unleashes a blast of lightning and kills the Leviathan. It falls, and Parlin catches Takara in his ship. However, Drapa also lands on it as well. Parlin then ejects from the ship, taking Takara with him. A triumphant Drapa climbs into the cockpit, but finds it has been locked onto a course for Cecil Spire. The starship crashes into the volcano and is destroyed. Drapa is killed, but now there is no way for the Sith to leave Kesh. For his acts of heroism and experience with the Doomed, Grand Lord Hiltz offers Parlin the position of serving as his hand. It is a stunning ascension for Spinner, one earned by his deeds of merit. Takara and Parlin begin a relationship, and Hiltz confides to Ileana that he also intends for their daughter to serve in the same capacity as Parlin.